I was thinking as I was listening to Joe's part of the conversation this evening, thank you, that he founded what is now the 100K business plan competition. And I founded what started out as an occasion to get together and drink conspicuous amounts of adult beverages. So I was embarrassed about this because it seemed sort of frivolous until I realized that, in fact, both of these things have been now woven into the fabric of the Sloan School. In fact, there are consumption functions in California and all over the place. And it all started out because I was totally frizzed out. It was the spring. We were all in a dither trying to figure out how we were going to find gainful employment when we got out of school. We had a treasury we weren't spending any money on. And I had been making my living as a professional guitar player. So I had an apartment full of audio equipment. I thought, well, I can bring the music and the treasury can pay for the beer. And it seemed like a silly idea, but everybody showed up. It was a Thursday. Nobody had Friday classes. And everybody basically committed atrocities and showed up on Tuesday and said, that was fun. Let's do it again. And I thought, a reorder. And one thing led to another. So Joe gave us a bit of a profile as to who you are, but we didn't talk about one thing that I would like to pursue at least briefly with you, which is what are you doing now? So how many of you are seriously considering going into entrepreneurship once you graduate? Okay, well, you need medication. How many of you already are running a company? Okay, well, the therapist will be outside later this evening. A quick story about this. 2 years ago, I got it in my head that I needed to write a book. And I had started 4 companies myself. I had been involved in counseling probably 100 young companies. And I got really interested in why so many of them failed. Because I would see a bunch of really smart, passionate, engaged, hardworking people go out and start a business, and 9 out of 10 of them would fail. And I thought, why is this? And I thought about my own experiences. I interviewed half a dozen entrepreneurs that I knew. I distilled a bunch of stuff out, and I wrote a book. And it's really hard. Something like 96% of people who start writing a book actually publish it. And midway through all of that, I began to understand why. It's just terribly difficult. But in October a year ago, it was done. And I thought, oh my God, I can't believe it. I got to have a book launch party. Then rented a nice place out on the seaport, lovely view, invited a bunch of people, put 3 entrepreneurs up on the stage with me. Everybody was sort of seated on stools. They all had microphones. And I said, you're looking at an audience of people who are considering, thank you, who are considering going into entrepreneurship. What do you have to say to them? And there's no rehearsal. These guys had no idea what I was going to ask them. It was a little bit of a high wire act. And all 3 of them said, don't do it. And I said, well, there's 2 obvious questions that come from this. One is, why would you say that? And the other is, given that you've obviously ignored your own advice and are doing it. In fact, I know you guys, a couple of you are doing it for the 2nd or 3rd time. What brought you back in the face of all of those things that caused you to say, don't do it? And I'm going to give you the answers to those questions next week, because I'm part of the wrap-up session on Thursday night. And we're going to talk about a bunch of stuff that has nothing to do with the hard skills. We're going to talk a little bit about how you deal with loneliness, imposter syndrome, anxiety, sleepless nights, a spouse that is raging at you for all the silly, irresponsible things that they think you're doing, et cetera, and what keeps people coming back for that. So that's a teaser. Right? If we don't completely gross you out in the course of this week, come back next week and we'll answer those questions. I'm going to give you a quick summary of some stuff that Joe covered in considerable detail. If you're going to succeed as an entrepreneur, back up. Many people start a company because they're really good at something. Maybe they really understand supply chain management or whatever. And it doesn't really occur to them that they have to be pretty good at a lot of other stuff, including figuring out who you're actually going to sell to, how you're going to make money. It's astonishing how many technically sophisticated entrepreneurs don't actually sit down and say, oh, I have to make money. And I noticed a number of you in his grid have signed up as being interested in social entrepreneurship. And every year I teach a class at Tufts on social entrepreneurship. And part of why the professor brings me in is because I'm obnoxious. And I tell them that if you plan to give away a pair of shoes for each pair of shoes you sell, you better make a lot of money on the pair of shoes you sell, or you will not be around to sustain this wonderful philanthropic vision you have. You have to make money. You have to figure out how to hire the right people, how to motivate them, how to fire them when one of them turns out to be a weenie. That's a technical HR term. You have to deal with the legal issues. Somebody decides that they're going to sue you because they want to take you out of the market, and for them, litigation is a corporate strategy. I don't want you to burst into tears, but you're going to have to learn how to sell a little bit as well and make presentations. When you have this happened to me a couple of years ago. I did a temporary CEO gig for a friend of mine that had an interesting medical technology. It was good. And when we showed up at one of the major Boston hospital chains with this, of course, they looked at us and said, well, we're the Beth Israel Deaconess. You should give this to us just so that you could tell people that we're on your customer list. Because every one of these jokers had had at least 2 courses in negotiation in the past year, right? So you got to learn how to handle that when they say that. For example, nice try, guys. You need to understand finances. You may need to raise capital. And not coincidentally, that's the curriculum for nuts and bolts. So tonight, I'm going to offer you a couple of, I hope, hot tips on how to find your customer and succeed with your venture. I'm going to tell you 2 stories. I'm going to hope that we can extract some lessons. I'm going to ask for your counsel because I'm still in this game. What should I have learned from these 2 stories? And you'll have plenty of opportunities to ask questions along the way. And I hate giving monologues. So if questions pop up along the way, don't be shy. Okay? Okay. Yes, I wrote a book. It's available on Amazon. Got involved in founding 4 healthcare startups with a group of docs out of Harvard Med School. Took a break from entrepreneurship for a couple of years and took over as CEO of a soy foods company that's publicly traded on the Hong Kong exchange. Company's a mess. It lost money for a lot of years. There was nothing innovative or entrepreneurial about it. It was just block and tackle work. It was my dubious privilege to fire 75 people in the course of turning this thing around. I had a couple normal jobs. I went to a couple schools. And as Joe mentioned, I'm still a working musician. During Christmas week, I played 5 gigs and 7 nights. I played last night. I do a fair amount of volunteer work in homeless shelters. That's one in Quincy where I volunteered on Thanksgiving Day to sit in the corner and be the nerdy musician playing nonviolent music while about 1,000 people were served their Thanksgiving dinners. So I only bring this up because it has affected my view of management. I don't operate so much under the hierarchical command and control stuff. I think of teams like I think of musical ensembles. I do not know how to play saxophone, but I sure know how to support the sax player. Some years ago, during a previous recession, the Wall Street Journal did a survey of who survived. And it turned out that they fell into 2 categories. There were those who decided to be cost leaders and aggressively cut their costs. That's not you. And those who were innovators, which might be you. And they focused on building their brands. And the fundamental question that they had to successfully answer is how is your end user dissatisfied? And I want to take a moment and hammer on that point, because people who are technically sophisticated often get seduced by the elegance of their technology. And they think, this is so awesome that if my customers aren't buying it, it must be because they're stupid. They never stop and ask the question, why are they dissatisfied? Because that's where the opportunity comes. And it doesn't have to be technologically elegant. If you're in a town and there's 50 kids who want a bicycle and there's no bicycle shop, there's an opportunity. A couple of bold assertions. Your business might survive. It's not going to prosper until you understand what you're really selling, who wants it, subject we will explore a bit more tonight. How are you going to find them? How will you make money? So far, so good? Yeah, okay. Questions you should ask regarding your venture. And these seem really simple. They are simple, but they're fundamental. What's broke that we fix? And who cares? And as Joe pointed out, that's actually not a rhetorical question. Specifically, who cares? Will they spend money to solve the problem? Every now and then, I've discovered it's fun working with startups, but they don't have any money. Right? I've discovered it's fun working with musicians. They also don't have any money. So ask yourself, are they spending money to solve the problem? How do I find them? How do I tell them about us? What are they doing to solve the problem now? Because if the answer is nothing, it's probably not a problem. Why will they think what I have is better? Doesn't matter why I think it's better. I might have been seduced by my own technology. Why will they think it's better? And who's going to pay me? Back to the medical example just for a moment. This little business that I ran for a short while had something that actually provided a benefit to cardiac patients. So the patients were the ultimate beneficiaries. They weren't going to pay for it. The docs were the ones requesting this technology because they loved it. They weren't going to pay for it either. Finally, the people who were going to pay for it were the folks in the purchasing department. And as mentioned, the first thing they were going to do is try and arm wrestle us into giving it to them. But we had to understand who actually is going to pay us, because the definition of customer includes somebody's going to give you money. Over and over again, I've asked groups of entrepreneurs, what's your greatest need? And about 80% of the time they say, raising money. Well, of course, the truth is they are nowhere near ready to raise money. But you should understand something here. Many investors might present themselves as rulers of the universe. But the fact is, ask yourself, if I have a sack full of money, where did I get this money? Well, it could be that Aunt Millie died and left me a bunch of money, but what's more likely is I went out and raised the money. So I did what you as a entrepreneur had to do, which is basically go out and tap dance your way into the hearts and minds of millions and get them to give you some capital. They didn't do that because they're philanthropic. They did it because they want more back than they put in. So it's my job to invest that money. And I know that statistically 9 out of 10 of the companies I invest in fail. Now, in this room, you're probably twice as smart as most of the other entrepreneurs out there, which means only 8 out of 10 of you will fail. Right? So this is terrifying to me, because if I invest in companies, for every situation where 8 out of 10 fail, there are others where 10 out of 10 fail. So if I start handing out money and I'm trying to figure out which of you will succeed. So my primary goal is trying to figure out, do you have a prayer? And there's a non-negotiable requirement if you're going to have a business. And that is, you have to have customers. You don't have to be smart. You don't have to have money. You don't have to be good looking. If you have customers, you'll look smart. You'll make money. And when I lived in California, it was true that if you made enough money, people would think you're good looking. Cynical, right? So, do you have any? Will you have any? Do you even know that you need them? And then how are you going to find them? And a little simple bit of arithmetic that a lot of people never do is say, if I land a customer, what's the customer worth? If the customer's worth $1,000 a year, and I want my business to be doing $1 million in revenue, a little math will tell you I need 1,000 customers. Well, is that even possible? If you do a little math and you discover that you need the entire population of Rhode Island in order to have a successful venture, you might want to look for another opportunity. So how much is each worth? How many will you need? How long will it take you to get them? Basic questions. So you want to assess what you're doing along two axes. Are you offering something which is important? And given that we live in a competitive world, is it unique? And of course, the sweet spot is to score high on both, right? So let's have a couple quick examples. Air, for example. Most of us will argue that it's important. Hard to argue that it's unique. And again, please don't become suicidal when I tell you this, but there are those who will argue that MIT decals are unique, but not particularly important. So, can you build a business selling air? Here's where I stand here and look at you until somebody answers the question. Can you build a business selling air? Yes. Louder? If you're selling air on the moon, okay. Geographics, good. There's an example. What else? Any of you guys have cars? Do your cars have tires? Do you ever have to stop at the gas station and pay for air? Any of you guys ever go scuba diving? I did my checkout dive off of Catalina Island, coast of California. Kind of overdid it, surprise. Down about 100 feet in the kelp beds, which is kind of like swimming through a redwood forest. And I thought, and I looked at the little gizmo on my wrist and thought, pretty soon I would pay a lot of money for some air. So, positioning, right? Okay. And if I told you that we have a pretty good business idea for something that's going to cost 29 cents and we can sell it for somewhere between $5 and $10, you'd say, well, somebody's dreaming. But au contraire, because your proud parents will cheerfully pay for these things, right? Okay, it's a little tongue-in-cheek, but there is a point, which is to figure out who's going to find what you're offering to be both important and unique. It is not everybody. Who specifically will find your offering to be unique and important? Figure out how to find them. Tell them what you're offering and take their money. So far, so good? Yes? Okay. I promised you 2 stories. Here's one. I was living in California at the time. I was running the clinical nutrition division of a medical company. Company had been $200 million in annual revenue for 12 straight years. And an entrepreneur came along, did what's called a leveraged buyout, and bought the company. Fired all of the senior management. Brought in some enthusiastic, energetic new people and said, I want to kick this up 50% to 300 million in about 3 years. And then I'm going to take it public. And so here's a little stock for you, and here's a little stock for you, and here's a little stock for you. And if we hit that bingo, it's going to be worth something. So you can buy that boat you've been looking at. You can buy that fleet of motorcycles you've been thinking about. You can put it in an investment fund and generate some wealth. It's really quite motivating. It was a very profitable business. We would sell a liter of solution to a hospital. We would make it for $3 and sell it for $70. Margins you can't get away with these days. Well, maybe, but very profitable. I was running that business and the market was changing and the business was going to go away. Oops. So I had to find some new opportunities because we were on a rampage to get ready for an IPO. I found one, and it was potential repositioning of the company, and nobody had done it before. That, by the way, should be words that you put on your tombstone. Nobody's done it before. Oops. But the market at the time was, there were 400,000 patients in the country who were on kidney dialysis. And tragically, it was rapidly growing. And everybody who's on dialysis goes to a dialysis center 3 times a week. The dialysis centers are all published in a federal document. So I know where you're going to be on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. I know the address of the place. I know the caregivers, et cetera. Very appealing. These patients are generally fluid restricted because one of the things your kidneys do is allow you to eliminate fluids, which means you can't do what I'm so casually doing here this evening, which is hydrate, right? And for other functions that your kidneys do, you also become clinically malnourished and you need nutrition supplementation. And all of the nutrition supplements were liquids, Ensure, things like that. This struck me as ridiculous. So we figured out how to create a nutrition supplement that was high in what you should have and low in what you shouldn't have and didn't have any fluid. Looked like a candy bar. One of these sort of no-brainers, right? Well, this was a non-prescription product, but we were an ethical company. We ran a clinical trial because we really did want to know, does it work? We got the results published in a peer-reviewed publication, which is sort of the gold standard. The bottom line was it did work. We had solid scientific evidence that the product noticeably improved the health of our patients. So we said, well, first hurdle's cleared. Let's do some business planning. Well, we know that these dialysis patients see 2 different clinicians. They see a doc about the dialysis regimen. They see a dietitian regarding what they can and cannot eat. We know how this works. It's the evangelical model. You have God, you have the apostles, and you have the normal people. Let's talk to the opinion leaders. And we asked them, would you recommend? And every one of them said, oh, geez, absolutely. Wish I had thought of it. This is sort of a no-brainer. How does it compare to the competition? Well, they're all liquid. You're the only one. We said, awesome. Geez, how do you feel about $3 a bar? I said, sounds good. How many days a week would you recommend this for your patients? 7. Out came the calculators. Said, my goodness, we have just blundered into a lovely opportunity. So let's pull together the marketing materials, take the beauty shots of the product, bring the sales force in, explain the commission plans, and launch. And we did. And it was a complete disaster. Sales came in at less than 10% of the forecast. So if in a given month we were supposed to do $400,000, we might do $30,000. Your turn. What did I do wrong? Tell me why this was such a bust. Yes.
So we did talk to the community, right?
Did you guys hear that? I didn't think so. Okay, I'm going to come back to you in a second. Go ahead, sir. Did it taste bad? Well, we didn't think so. But it turns out that when your kidneys fail, your palate shifts. And protein tastes like spoiled meat. And the product of necessity had a lot of protein. So that connects to what you just said that only I heard. You'll get credit in a second. So what else? Guys, if you're thinking of launching a business and you can't smoke your way through this, you're in trouble. I'm sorry? One more time? Market research. Well, you need to elaborate on that. That sounds like a lovely headline, but I don't know what you mean.
Some way of reaching out to the customer, the patients.
You're getting warm. Let me spare everybody the anxiety that I know you're feeling, because you had the right answer. Who did we talk to? We talked to the clinicians, but they don't buy it, and they didn't need it. And when we talked to the patients, they didn't want it, and they couldn't afford it. Now, this was flummoxing for us. Why on earth would they not want a product that demonstrably improved their health and extended their life? Well, a question that we should have asked: who gets kidney failure? 44% of them get there after a lifetime of mismanaging their high blood pressure, and 33% of them get there after a lifetime of mismanaging their diabetes. So 3/4 of our target patient population had not taken care of themselves for their whole life. They're not going to start now. Oops. But wait, there's more. It was for sale in retail outlets, and they wouldn't carry the product. Well, why not? We had been selling to hospitals. We didn't know anybody in the retail channel. We didn't understand retail sales. Retailers basically sell shelf space. So, linear foot, shelf space. Now, if you want to see somebody burst into laughter, walk into a pharmacy sometime and say, I have a product that you've never seen before, made by a company you've never heard of, for a group of patients who don't want it, but I'd like you to carry the product. Right? The short answer is, how do you spell fat chance? One day, one of these fellows took pity on me. I guess I was looking kind of pitiful at that point. And he said, Bob, come here. He says, you see this foot of shelf space? Let's say, for example, it's got Crest toothpaste on it. I've got all these algorithms that will tell me with considerable accuracy how much revenue I'm going to get from this foot of shelf space in a given month. So if I shove the toothpaste off and I put your product on there, I can't think of any reason why I ought to lose money. So make yourself comfortable, get out your checkbook, and write me a check for that shelf space. The industry calls it slotting fees. You might call it extortion. The slotting fees are onerous. The time for CVS, it was $1 million a quarter, plus 6% of your revenues, plus it was called a guaranteed sale. We had to put 2 units of each stock keeping unit we had in each of the CVSs in the country for nothing. And then if anybody actually bought them, they would pay for the reorder, maybe in 90 days or so. Well, I was just appalled. I said, this is ridiculous. I can't do that. Now what? So, quick personal sidebar. We were trying to show Wall Street we were a good candidate for an IPO, and if it came through, we'd all make some money. Everybody I worked with would be able to go off and buy another house or whatever. And I was putting the IPO at risk. That put me in the doghouse. And we would have senior management meetings once a month where we'd sit about a table and everybody would report on their business. And they'd say, so Bob, how's the Regain business doing? Your forecast called for $350,000 this month. How'd you do? And I'd say 20. I'm sorry, Bob, I didn't hear you. What was that number? 20. It was terrible. I felt bad. It was like watching a train wreck in slow motion. And it just kept going for an entire year, ruined a year of my life. So what did we do about it? Well, we didn't give up easily. We learned about inside sales because we said if 75% of these people are not candidates, 25% of them are. Maybe they had scarlet fever, or they were in a car accident. There was some exogenous reason why their kidneys failed. We can reach them. We got reimbursement in 40 different states because the states all have different policies. It was almost as much fun as 40 consecutive root canals. We felt really bad, and we found an outfit that catered to that 25%. And they were very interested in our product because we did have an honest-to-God clinical trial, sound science, all that stuff. We sold it for about $1 more than we spent on it and managed to get out. And as a postscript, thankfully, I overachieved in the other businesses that we had. We did have our IPO. I got out of the doghouse and everybody made a little money. But it was a harrowing experience. And the lessons from it are now burned into my bones. It was painful. Story number 2. Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry, we have room acoustics acting up here. Say that again. Great, you're about to get immortalized. Check. Thank you.
So when you study your competitors in this case, why did they can still sell those liquid nutrition product to those patients?
When we studied our competitors, and what was the rest of that?
Why are they able to still selling those liquid nutrition product to those patients? Why are they successful than yours?
What a really good question. Thank you. All right, why were our competitors able to foist off these liquid products on people? Well, I could get cynical and say they had 1,400 really highly trained sales reps. But there's more to it than that. I think nobody had come forward with an alternative to the liquids. It was just one of those things you accepted. I accepted for a long time that my car would not have heated seats. And one day I got in a car that had heated seats and I said, oh, my God, this changed my life. Right? I think nobody, heated steering wheels, whoa. Right? I think nobody had ever thought of offering a nutrition supplement that didn't have the liquids, but we were totally unprepared for what it took to succeed with that. Thank you for your question. All right, story number 2. This probably serves as proof that entrepreneurship is a form of mental illness, because I did a couple more of these things and they got a little more successful. And eventually I came to the attention of a group of docs at Harvard Med School who were working in some nutrition areas. And they called me up and asked me if I'd like to start a company with them. And I said, well, I'm flattered, but absolutely not, because there's nobody worse to start a company with than a bunch of doctors. And God love you, but the smart doctors are the worst because they think they're really good at something. They figure they must be really good at everything. And no, thank you. But if you're going to the conference in San Antonio in 2 weeks, bring your jeans. I'll take you out for tacos and tequilas because I like you, but I'm not starting a company with you. 6 months later, well, of course, they said, Bob, you don't need to sugarcoat it. You can tell us what you think. And 6 months later, they called me up and said, we've raised some seed capital contingent on finding a CEO. And at this point, I had a couple of successes. I had started putting products that we'd invented into Walgreens and so forth. They said, between our investors and us, we've only found one person in the country who's taken this kind of technology and put it into retail channels. Would you fly to Boston and meet our investors? And I did. And I loved it. And one thing led to another. and we ended up with a new company. Well, I took a look at everything they were doing for research, and none of it would have come to market in less than 3 years. And it was things like vaccines, which I just didn't know anything about. So I said, well, how do you guys feel about diabetes? And they said, oh, we like diabetes. So I said, well, let's consider a product for diabetes. At the time, and this has changed now, mind you, this is a snapshot, but at the time, there were 10 million people diagnosed with diabetes. And the general thinking was it's a chronic disorder. If you get it, you're never getting rid of it. You can manage it, but you're not getting rid of it. The goal of diabetes management is to restrict the bandwidth of the fluctuation of your blood sugar. You don't want it to be too high. You don't want it to be too low. So you want to kind of narrow that range, which is what a normally functioning pancreas does. There were 4 million people at the time who used insulin to lower their blood sugar. And all of them, if they did it wrong, were at risk of their blood sugar going too low. Now, unless you have diabetes or have a relative with diabetes, you might say, so what? Well, most of the consequences of diabetes that we hear about, like kidney failure, blindness, amputation of your extremities, et cetera, are associated with your blood sugar staying too high for too long. Low blood sugar is very different. Must be treated right away, or it can lead to fainting. So this is bad if you're stuck in traffic, and out you go. It's bad if you're walking around your neighborhood and suddenly collapse, and people whose lawn you have collapsed in don't know you, and they call the police and say, there's a homeless alcoholic on my front lawn. I mean, there are problems associated with it. Where it gets really bad is at night, because most people who are tightly controlling their blood sugar will eat 3 small meals a day, 3 small snacks a day, regular small injections of insulin to restrict that fluctuation. That falls apart at night. Nobody's going to wake themselves up 2 or 3 times a night to eat something and inject. So what the typical approach was, big nighttime snack, big injection of insulin, and you hope that the two will balance each other through the night. Doesn't work, because everything in your nighttime snack turns into glucose at the same time. So the spike is higher, but the duration is no longer. And the manifestation of that is that somewhere between 2 a.m. and 6 a.m., the food has run out, the insulin is still working, and you are at risk of lapsing into a coma. So we held focus groups. Who can tell us what a focus group is? Come on, you can't all be complete rookies in this field. Nobody knows what a focus group is. Sorry? You stick a bunch of people in a room, there's one-way glass there, there's mics in the ceiling, cameras around, and a professional interviewer talks to people. And they say, well, we've invented a car that is worth $60,000 and we're going to sell it for $35,000. And how do you feel about this? And they collect research. So we did focus groups. And after a couple of them, I lost control of myself, had a little temper tantrum, came out from behind the one-way glass, sat down in the room, looked at all those folks and said, we've just spent 45 minutes walking you through the science and the technology. What we haven't talked about is, what's your greatest fear? And they all sort of said, oh, I'm worried I'm going to die in my sleep. In fact, I don't sleep in my bed any longer. I sleep in that recliner in my living room because I'm afraid if I get too comfortable, I won't wake up. I thought, oh my, that's compelling. We might be able to do something about this. And I think we will have a motivated audience when we do. So we came up with something that we called Night Bite. Collection of nutrients that turn into glucose at different rates through the evening. Being a marketer at heart, of course, dubbed it time to release glucose. designed to lower the incidence of low blood sugar without causing high blood sugar. This time we did make sure it tasted good. Thank you for the person that asked that question. And we gave it a non-medical name and non-medical packaging. Why did we do that? I'm sorry, I'm hearing murmurs here and there. Somebody raised their hand and volunteered to answer. Hey, look, I already stood up in front of you and told you about a complete face plant that I did. If you got any feelings about being embarrassed, set them aside. We're here to get some work done. So yes, Mark. I'm sorry? Oh, yeah. We grabbed the microphone for you so that you could be immortalized like everybody else here.
Thanks. To solve the shelving issue, right? To make it more appealing to the customer and to.
It's a reasonable answer, but it's not the right one. Okay. We wanted to give it a name that was not medical. Why was that? Speak into the microphone.
For it to
It's
be
like
less
Family Feud.
scary,
Sorry?
so that it's less scary for patients to.
You're getting warm, but you're not there yet.
Easy to speak about this product and refer this product to friends.
Say that again.
Like easy to pronounce this product and
Easier to pronounce.
yeah, say about this product and recommend to friend.
If I have a product that says diabetes on it in great big letters, and you're with a group of your friends and you pull out that product, what do they now know about you?
Yeah, diabetes.
Well, I should have seen this coming, but I didn't. And I was busy arm wrestling with the FDA because I wanted to be able to say on the package for people with diabetes. And the customers I talked with said, Bob, if you do that, I will not buy your product. I don't think of myself as a diabetic. I am a lawyer. I am a banker. I am an entrepreneur. He gets migraines. She gets the flu. I've got diabetes. We've all got conditions that we manage. It's nobody's business. Okay, I was working very hard to do something that would have killed the business. Moral of the story, talk to your customers, right? I said, well, what should it look like? And they said, well, make it look like something maybe an athlete would consume. I said, all right, fair enough. Timed release glucose. Yeah, that's code. Those of us in the world of diabetes know exactly what that means. And nocturnal hypoglycemia. Yeah, we know what that means, but it's not obvious to people who are not on the island. And in fact, we ended up selling some to marathon runners. Totally, I mean, it worked fine, wasn't our target market, but it showed the crossover appeal. Make it look like an energy bar, don't make it look like medicine. So this time around, we not only talked to the clinicians, we also talked to parents, because there is a segment of the population that develops what's called type 1 diabetes. It used to be called juvenile diabetes. It's an autoimmune disorder, and it means that your pancreas quits doing what it ought to do when you're a kid. And we thought that our target market was going to be the parents of those kids. So we went off to the elementary schools and we sat in those chairs that are in fact about this high in the PTO meetings. And we talked to parents. We went to meetings of the Juvenile Diabetes Foundation. We spent a lot of time with caregivers. And we started asking them questions like, where would you expect to buy this? And what would you expect to pay? And don't say it out loud, because I don't want you influencing him. Write it down, pass it up to the front. And pretty quickly it would divide into two piles. Grocery stores, 59 cents. Retail pharmacies, $1.25, same product. Distribution channels affect your customer's perception. Call me silly. I like retail pharmacies. Right? We went to all these meetings. We found an ad agency that knew the field. We came up with ads that were radically different. Most of the ads at the time were hypodermic needles, which that really makes you feel warm and cozy, right? But the thrust of the ad, it was incredibly, I'm gonna use a big word here, solipsistic. It was my needle sharper than her needle. It won't hurt as much by my needle. We had flying pigs. Nobody turned the page. It was like, what? And there was some lame copy about to sleep, perchance to dream, and one bite is, and the rest is easy, et cetera. But it was attention getting. And it was sympathetic because it was not focused on the fact that you needed to inject yourself. We sold the benefits, right? So we started running these ads and we started getting 100 calls a day. We said, oh my goodness, we need more phones. 200 calls a day, we said, we probably need somebody to answer the phone. We were in Kendall Square, so we'd walk out into Kendall Square and we'd hold a mirror under somebody's nose, and if it fogged up, we'd say, well, you appear to be breathing. Would you like a job? And there are more geniuses per square foot in Kendall Square than most places, so it wasn't completely risky. At 300 calls a day, we said, God, we should have put a database in to track all these people. And at 500 calls a day, we were stuffing people along things like this. We said, I think we're onto something. And to fast forward, we ended up in every pharmacy chain in the country, and the amount we paid for slotting fees was zero. And we are now, I'm pleased to say, an obscure Harvard Business School case study because nobody had done this. And the lesson, of course, was that understanding our customer this time around helped us invent a better product and build a more successful business. So I'm going to blitz my way through a couple of steps as to how we actually got that distribution. Yes? I got it for you, Sam. That's all right. Would you hand that back to me, please? Thank you.
If you take success as 100% in the second story, how much of this 100% was a result of the first failure?
How much of the 100% was a result of?
Of the first failure and the first startup you've been running?
I'm sorry, I'm still not understanding your question.
The first story you told us regarding,
Yeah,
so the first story was a kind of failure, correct?
it was a failure, no doubt about it.
And how much percentage and lesson learned from the first story will lead to success in the second story?
Remind me to give you $1 when tonight's over, because that's a brilliant segue into what I'm going to ask the audience in just a moment. But yes, I did learn some lessons. Yes, they were painful. And I'm going to ask you to tell me what those lessons should be in a couple minutes. But first, let me walk you through something here. We needed to understand our target consumers a little better because we had to figure out how are we going to make money. So given that some percentage of people who have diabetes don't take care of themselves, how are we going to find the ones that not only do take care of themselves, but will spend money to take care of themselves? And the answer turned out to be a group of professionals known as certified diabetes educators. They have an association, surprisingly enough, it's called the American Association of Diabetes Educators. They have a website. You want to find an educator, you type in 02142, and it pops up Cambridge, Massachusetts. Here's a whole list of educators with all their contact data. We were able to find the clinicians, but we said, well, what do they worry about? We answered that question and we ended up with about 3,000 certified diabetes educators being our sales force for free. This is a cute trick. You should want to know how we did this. Okay. Most of these CDEs have a meeting once a month. They bring in everybody in their patient population, 30, 40, 50, whatever it is, usually Saturday mornings. And once a month, they walk them through, how's everybody doing? What are the latest developments? We said, we called them up and said, what's your biggest professional frustration? So we were exploring pain points, okay? What do you think their answer was? Okay, bring me the dental tools. I got to pull some teeth here. Yes, sir.
Patients don't listen to them?
We interrupt this program for a brief word from our audio department. Say that again, please.
That the patients don't listen to them?
Oh my God, right the first time. Yes, exactly. I tell them what to do and they don't do it. The clinical term for which is patient compliance. Thank you. We said, well, what if we told you we have something that they will love, they will comply all of the time, they will thank you for recommending it to them? And they said, well, God, I would shout it from the rooftops. So they would have been offended if we had offered them money. We are healers. Right? You are helping me heal. The headline on this is one of the two things you should remember from tonight. Who wins if you win? Because it will make a profound difference in your ability to move the needle on your business. So the certified diabetes educators would also call the pharmacists and say, Charlie, I just talked to 30 of my customers about a product that I want them to have, and you know I send my patients to you. Get off your butt and order this product. Nobody ever said slotting fees, right? So our sales model for a long time was we'd call the educators, they'd tell the patients, and the patients would buy from us. And we'd make a little money. But one day it occurred to us, we're not going to get to heaven doing this. We got to get into the retailers. Maybe the educators can call the retailers, the patients can call the retailers. Then when we call the retailers, they'll cave in and say, all right, and we'll make more money. So note that our customer definition just changed, right? It was the patients, then it was the diabetes educators. Now it is the retailers. And it becomes relevant to say, well, what do they care about? Well, we were shipping directly to the patients for a while. One day we called them up and said, we're not doing that anymore. Shipping costs are killing us. But you go to a pharmacy to buy insulin. Where do you go? And wouldn't it be more convenient to buy this stuff at the pharmacy? Why, yes, it would. Where do you go? I go to Buzz's pharmacy. Well, can I call Buzz and tell him that you'd like our product? Well, in fact, let me give you that rascal's phone number. I've been going there for 20 years. Tell him to get off his behind and order this stuff for me. So we'd call Buzz. And Buzz, your customers want our product and you don't carry it. And I would hate to send them to another pharmacy. What can we do about this? And Buzz would say, well, you know, I'm part of Walgreens. I got to have corporate permission, et cetera. We'd say, we know that. But there's a threshold below which you can buy without corporate permission, and I'm betting it's $100. Well, yeah, as a matter of fact, it is. You'll be pleased to know that our starter kit is $99.95. Anyway, off we went. Nobody mentioned slotting fees. And I'm not going to tell you how we did this because we're out of time, or soon will be. But if you think retailers don't care very much about patient health, wait till you talk to wholesalers. But we managed to do that as well. And it's a cute trick for another time. But what's of note here is, once again, we changed our definition of our customer. And I'm going to skip this because I want to get to this. Our sales grew like crazy. Our reorder rate would make most consumer companies swoon. We got a bunch of publicity within our arena and eventually sold the business to a billion-dollar pharmaceutical firm in Costa Mesa, California. So now I want your help, because I've had a bunch of experiences, some of which have been extremely painful. I hope I've learned some lessons because, like you, I'm still in the game. So help me summarize. What should I have learned from these two experiences? This was your question. I'm rephrasing it. Thank you very much. What should I have learned from all this that would be relevant to building my next sales model? And of course, by the way, if you think you might have learned a lesson, you could say that as well. But enough about you. Let's talk about me. What should I have learned from all this? Sam? All right, take it away.
I think the first one is just knowing your consumer.
Know your consumer. Thank you very much. There's a marketing phrase called consumer intimacy, which can be a little uncomfortable to use, but the idea is get right in there and understand their pains and their hopes and their fears and et cetera. Okay, what else should I have learned?
Know exactly problem of this customer.
No.
Problem. No exact problem of this customer. No pain
Okay.
point.
Okay, good. Thank you. Thanks for all the help. I'm feeling smarter by the minute.
Make sure that there are customers.
Oh my God. Make sure that there are customers. Boy, we got a whole exercise we could do if we had more time. It takes 3 lines on a P&L to figure out whether or not your business is a complete bust or not. But yes, thank you. That's fundamental, but quite right.
I think within this industry, the importance of discretion.
The importance of,
Discretion.
what's that last word?
Discretion.
Refreshing?
Sorry, discretion, being discreet with your products, knowing to make sure, I think within healthcare, that you're practicing kind of consent when solving problems.
Yes, yes. Some measure of ethics helps as well. And we have a man over here with an idea.
Think of who will win if you win. So always
Ask yourself whose incentives are aligned with yours, and they would love to see you succeed because it helps them succeed. And we have someone up there as well. Sam, you didn't know you were getting an aerobics workout tonight.
good for my fitness.
Even if you are not the largest in the market, you can still create a negotiation force with your retailer and wholesaler by having the correct business model.
You have more power than you think you have if you have a bunch of customers. And this sounds manipulative, but what I did in getting into those pharmacies was I aggregated a group of customers and sold them to the pharmacy chain. Right? No slotting fees. And I could get kind of belligerent and say, no, I'm not paying your slotting fees. I'm not paying you to find the customers. I already found the customers. And here's a list of your chief competitors, and you're welcome to tell me no, but take a wild guess where I'm going after you tell me no. Because I had that clout. Thank you very much. All right. I'm keeping an eye on the clock here. Here's a couple that I hope I've learned. Know your customers intimately. Thank you. Also, if you think your product is for everyone, you're delusional. It's not for everyone. Products that are for everyone aren't actually for anyone. You've got to have positioning. And this is hard for people, but nobody actually needs your product. What they might need is the benefits that you get. For example, I actually don't need these glasses I'm wearing. What I need is to see better. So I hired glasses to help me see better. Some of you hired contact lenses, and I bet some of you know somebody who went in to see the surgeon for the LASIK procedure. All of us were trying to meet the same need, which was we wanted to see better. Who can tell us what market segmentation is? Okay, well, I'm just going to blast through this one, Sam, because I'm watching the clock. Thank you. It's customary to say, if we're trying to reach certain parts of the market, let's focus all of our advertising, et cetera, resources on the parts of the market that make sense. The most customary is to say, the chief buyers in this arena are women between the ages of 30 and 45 with aggregate household incomes north of $80,000 a year. All right. Procter & Gamble segmenting a market for people who want to buy their cereals or something. For you, I think that's wrong. I think that the axis you should be segmenting on is who's motivated to do something about this. So let's say that I have invented a product that keeps you from having your second heart attack. So if you had your first heart attack yesterday and you did not survive, you're not my customer. I'm sorry, that was macabre. But if you did survive, you are feeling the pain today. You definitely do not want a second heart attack. If I'm talking to your brother, he will say, you know, we've got the same family history and all of that. I'm a little worried about this. That person might be interested in my fabulous invention as well. And then there are people that you know, that you work with, who say, well, I'm going to keep an eye on this. But they're not in a hurry to do anything about it. The urgency is not there. And many a marketer has made the mistake of saying, let's go where the numbers are. It's silly to go where the numbers aren't. Let's go where the numbers are. And I disagree. I think the answer there is forget it, because this is a graveyard. If we're trying to sell my heart attack remedy to a bunch of college students who know perfectly well that they're bulletproof, they're going to live forever, and that the two major food groups are pizza and beer, they're not going to buy my heart attack remedy, right? So this is obvious. Let's start at the top. If you remember one slide from tonight, remember this one. If you want to change buying habits, that's hard. The kinds of things that motivate people to change their buying habits are pain, fear. Think about my night bite patients. Greed, which we haven't talked about, but probably doesn't need explaining. Vanity. There's a whole cosmetics industry that we could talk about some other time. But virtue is a tough sell. And when I was selling Regain, I was selling virtue, because the people would come up, the doc would say, congratulations, Elmer, your blood chemistries are better than they were 6 months ago. Elmer would say, I spent all this money, I don't feel a damn bit better, and all I get's a pat on my back. I don't think so. So, skip this. I love marketing. I'm a huge believer in marketing. You Sloan students are taking courses in marketing. You're talking about multivariate factor analysis. And I'm going to spare you all of that, give you a master's degree in marketing in 2 bullet points. You're welcome. Find out what your customers want. Give it to them. Now, there's a lot of sophistication that goes into actually doing that. But if you get wrapped up in the sophistication and overlook these 2 points, I fear for you. I'm going to skip all of this except the very last line, because I had a boss that used to walk around saying this, and I wanted to kill him. He would say, Jones, there is no hocus pocus that takes the place of focus. I think, make him stop. About 2 months ago, I got an email from somebody in Australia who had watched a video of this talk and said, Bob, I just want you to know that what you thought was a harmless little quip has made it into our corporate mission. And we're going to do it. We're not asking your permission, but we did want to say thank you. So you're not going to be out there promoting your product if you want to succeed. You want to find your customers. You want to find the people who want what you've got and sell it to them. And I think we go till 9. Oh my God, I'm on a rampage to stop at 8:30. Well, we might stop a little early, given that I've already rampaged my way through some of this stuff. Maybe I'll do some of the slides over again. All right, let's talk a little bit, thank you, a little bit about competition, because you do have it. If you don't have it, then what you're looking at is not legitimately a need, right? And if they're not spending money, the people you're prospecting, to solve the problem, they don't think it's a problem. So you probably If you think of yourself as the jockey and your business is the horse, if you're in that situation, shoot the horse. Find another one. So ask yourself, given that they are spending money somehow or other to solve this problem, why is what you have better in their eyes? Okay, a couple more things that I hope I've learned. Even if your customers need what you have, you asked me about lessons I learned from the Regain experience. Here it is. They need what you have, but they don't want it. You can't sell it. You could be a really good sales rep. If they don't want it, you can't sell it. In fact, in the early stages of launching your business, it doesn't matter who needs it. What matters is who wants it. I was, for a stretch of time, in the weight loss business. Terrible business. And we had a product that worked. And there were women who would call us who were a size 4. And by every objective measure, they did not need our weight loss product. But they thought they should be a size 2. And they became our customers. Now, you could argue that that's crazy. But the moral of the story pertains. What matters is who wants it. But if you can't find your customers, you can't sell your product. And P.S., this is another teaser for next week. If you can't communicate your product benefits within seconds, you can't sell it. The acid test for this, which Joe referenced in that pyramid that he put up, the 30-second sell, a lot of entrepreneurs I know will do a great job if they've got 30 minutes. And they just mangle it if they've got 30 seconds. Because it's really hard. You need that focus to create websites, brochures, collateral material. And if you can't do it, your idea, your product, your service may not have real benefits, or you may not understand them. And if you can't give that elevator pitch, 30 seconds or less, followed by all the supporting details, you're unlikely to raise any money. Quick example. Heard about this one over lunch yesterday. This guy says, Bob, you know about all the shootings that are going on in schools? One of the problems that compounds all of that is that the teachers don't follow the safety protocols. They huddle all the students in the corner of the room and fail to lock the door. The bad guy walks in through an unlocked door and says, thank you for putting all my targets close together. Right. I thought, well, shit, this is gripping. He says, what I've got is something that goes on the phones of every teacher. And they can check in, I'm okay, I'm okay. The police gather outside, they don't know where the bad guy is in the building, and they're required to comb all the way through and clear every room. And if the bad guy is in the last room, then there's 20 or 30 minutes that go by during which a lot of damage gets done. But what we now have is a little grid that lights up, and we know that all of these kids are safe and the bad guy's in the southeast corner. Well, I mean, I didn't have to ask him, how does it work? How much does it cost? Anything. I mean, the idea was like, right? So next week, on Tuesday, we're going to have a session, as Joe mentioned, called Presenting Your Venture. And I'd like you to take a look at this, because next week, we're going to invite a bunch of you to grab one of these microphones and come up here where I am and pitch to the audience. Now, the bad news, if you have stage fright, you'll be mortified, right? You'll break out in hives or whatever. The good news is this is about as safe an environment as you're ever going to find in order to try this stuff out. You can fall flat on your face and your classmates will still give you a round of applause. because you had what it took to get up here and try it. So you got a week, think about this, but Tuesday of next week, we're going to have a go at some of this. P.S. It's not just pitching for capital. Sometimes what's required is to be able to summarize this. Let's say that I would like to hire you, but you have had the good fortune to work at a bunch of companies that paid you way more money than I have. Nevertheless, you have a skill set that I think would really augment our company, and I would love to have you on board. I have to cook up a pretty compelling sales pitch as to why you'd want to walk away from a lot of cash to join a feisty little startup that has no money, struggling. We may well fail, most of us do, et cetera, and I want you anyway. That's presenting your venture. Another example, we've had a bad quarter. I'm at risk of not being able to make payroll, and my staff is beginning to be demoralized. I can't have that. I have to re-inspire the vision. We set out to do this. We are on track to do this. This is a bump in the road. This part of what Joe was talking about in terms of execution and people and et cetera. We're going to do some of this next week. For those of you who are brave enough to actually show up, you'll have your chance. Practice a little bit. I think you'll enjoy it. All right, a couple of final questions. I'm going to turn it over to you guys for some questions, and I'll offer you a summary. Where do my customers go for help or advice? How will I reach them? Actually, I'm going to stop for a second. I have worked with a few companies who are vastly better at Google AdWords and the analytic processes than I am. And they have done a nice job of collaborating with Facebook and market segmentation and putting ads out, et cetera. But all of it is arm's length analytics. If the phone ever rang and somebody said, "Tell me why I should buy your stuff," totally unable. If the phone rang and it's Walmart, excuse me, saying we have an opportunity, and if you can handle a 50,000 unit order, we'd like to continue the conversation. No idea how to do it. There's a limit to how far you can go with the Google Analytics and the social media. And I have a little story for you. It's marginally embarrassed, but I was involved with this bunch of docs, and we invented a product that helps you sleep at night. And we had to come up with packaging and a name. And you should do those things with your customer in mind. We thought, we don't know who our customer is. We don't know who's going to pay for this. And sort of top down, we thought, well, working moms. They're overscheduled, they're overworked, they're over-caffeinated. They need this. Working moms is the second hardest job on the planet. Single working moms is the hardest job on the planet. So I said, well, I like the idea. It makes intuitive sense, but I want to go explore it with a group of moms. Fools rush in where angels fear to tread. I found a group called Type A Parents Boot Camp. What I didn't realize was that this was a group of, and they hate this term, mommy bloggers, right? They would write blogs and get paid. I'm evaluating 3 vacuum cleaners this week, right? The conference was in Orlando. There were 100 attendees, one of whom was male. Yeah. And I didn't know that they all knew each other. And I didn't know that they were all going to show up in their yoga pants. And I showed up in a suit. And they're all elbowing each other saying, somebody in your family die? Nobody in my family died. Who's the mortician? And I thought, oh, I have screwed up big time. And I will also say parenthetically that it's been my experience that a group of women talk differently when there are no men in the room. And we would be walking about the buffet table, loading the chicken and the salad, and I'd be thinking, I should not be hearing what I'm hearing. But I had pitched a bunch of them on this idea that if they slept better, they would feel better, they would do a better job at all of their jobs. I even rented a list of names of 100,000 women who had opted in to receive these kinds of mailings. They all shopped at Whole Foods. They had the profile that you'd want. And almost nobody replied. So after a while, a couple of these women, their curiosity got the better of them. This wonderful woman from Alabama came over and said, "Sweetie, what are you doing in this room here?" And I told her, and she said, "Oh my goodness, well, you're not a stiff. Carrie, come over here and meet my new friend, Bob." And pretty soon I had a bunch of conversations. And I asked them, "How come nobody's buying my stuff?" And they said, "Oh, sweetie, we just don't spend any money on ourselves. We'll spend a fortune buying worthless stuff for our children, maybe $2 on our husbands, but we don't spend any money on ourselves. And, you know, we kind of look on sleep as a deferrable luxury. I mean, I'm tired, but it's Wednesday. I'll make it up on the weekend. I'm not spending any money to fix this now." However, from that 100,000 names that we emailed to, there was a small group that ordered and reordered and reordered. And we were shipping the product ourselves because I didn't care about the money. What I cared about was the information. After a while, I couldn't stand it. I called them up. And I said, "Hi, I make this product that you've been buying. Thank you for buying it. I love you. Can you tell me why you're buying?" And in the constellation of answers, the common factor that threaded through all of that, I run marathons. And I recover more rapidly if I sleep well. Here, I thought I was trying to put together something that was sensitive, you know, made with love and all. I'm selling to warriors. There's a whole new realm for us, complete pivot. Now we're selling athletic performance. Okay, my point is that I would have died of old age before I'd sorted that out through Facebook and Google AdWords and all that stuff. There is a point when you have to talk to your customers. And if you can't do it, acknowledge it, but get somebody on board who will not faint in that situation. Because beyond a certain point, there's a limit to the value. And then you can get on about with this list. How much will they pay? Where will they go to buy it? And who's going to be responsible for sales? Because it takes a particularly deviant personality to do that stuff and like it. But it's essential. You have to have it as part of your organization. So I have a summary slide and one other before we knock it off for the evening. But you have an opportunity here. What I've tried to cover for you is that you have to have customers or you don't have a business. If you're going to have customers and you want them to buy your product, you need to understand what their pain is, and you need to be sure that your pain solves their problem. If you want them to buy it repeatedly, you have to have the right combination of price and packaging and availability and et cetera, et cetera. And I told you a story about something that was a complete failure and something which was somewhat more successful. Your turn. Questions? Way in the back. And Sam, it's your aerobics time again.
Who was it? Sorry, I didn't see the hand.
Hi, I want to know which part of this do you love? Which part does it bring your energy up? Like the entrepreneurship, all of this different companies that you ran?
I missed about half of that. What part do I spend my energy on?
Which
No.
part is do you feel your energy go up like when you do these things? And also, which part of it does it make you love it? And which part of it does it make your energy goes up? It's like a balance, right?
I hate questions like this. No, I'm teasing. It's a very good question. Thank you. This is kind of a casual question, but how many of you think that you may actually be an entrepreneur? Okay. Well, we entrepreneurs are weird. Right? You're just wired differently. People become entrepreneurs and stay with it because they can't do anything else. Right? I mean, I've cycled in and out of corporate jobs and actually done reasonably well with it. I turned around a company that had lost money for 23 years. Pretty hard to do. Fired 75 people, replaced. Anyway, the problem is, for me, possibly for you, it's a bit like that pair of shoes that looks great in the store. When you walk around in them for a while, you think, they really don't fit. And I can't wait to get out of them. Right? And there's a bunch of other stuff, which I'm going to elaborate on, frankly, on our last session, as to where are the rewards. Because most of us don't get it right the first time. People use the term pivot, but that means recover from your failure. And that would argue for a slightly different definition of failure. But I like feeling like I have solved a problem for a group of people that I can identify. From a selfish perspective, I like the odd mix of creativity and discipline that's required to actually do this. I like working with people who are energetic and share the same motivations that I do. One of the things that I found over and over again in large corporate employment could probably be assembled under the umbrella heading of politics, when I would rather be solving customer problems than jockeying over what typeface we should use in our brochure. Right? So it's a much longer answer and I could bore you to death with it, but we're going to talk a little bit about this on our final session. So you had a question? Sam, I know you're enjoying running up and down the stairs.
So my question is on the nature of the problem that you have to solve. So
Your
a lot of
question
people,
is on?
the nature of the problem that you have to solve for your customers. I think a lot of people talk about a hair on fire problem, but sometimes, it's impossible to find hair on fire in this day and age. So how do you know that your problem and the nature of it, it's not just an annoyance you're solving, but an actual real tangible thing that people would pay money for?
I don't have a really good answer for that. I tend to listen to people, and if I'm hearing the same complaint frequently, then I have sort of a filtration process. How urgently do they feel about this? How much money are they willing to spend to solve it? Because if I can't make any money, I can't help them for very long, et cetera. Can I find them? Can I reach them? Can I persuade them, et cetera? So after talking to these, this is an anecdotal answer, but after talking to these women who are marathon runners, I thought, oh my God, my target market is women who run. And then I thought, well, why can't it also be women who do CrossFit and triathlons? And come to think, why does it have to be women? Why can't it just be amateur athletes who are not, I'm not competing with Sam, I'm competing with how I did yesterday. Sam and I run together, right? And I'm going to cheer him on when he beats me like a bad drum because I'm happy for him. I'm not competing with him. There's all this stuff that I learned, and I started exploring it. I found my way to the Marathon Coalition, which is a group of about 50 runners here in Boston. Usually about 30 of them qualify to run Boston. They're all completely out of their minds. They get together at 7 a.m. on Saturday mornings in the middle of January, and they spend a half an hour talking about the strategy for miles 20 through 23 because they're downhill and you have to adjust your stride. And then they go out and run 17 miles in the ice. Gonzo. But I was in the thick of a group of people that could have been my customers. And I said, how important is recovery in your working out? Oh, it's imperative. Well, what are you doing to recover? How you feel about sleep? Geez, that could be a secret weapon. Anyway, I sort of have to know that they care about it, that they're urgent about it, that somehow or other I can assemble people who can help me solve the problem. How do I get tryptophan across the blood-brain barrier? Right? Harvard? Right? Okay. Thank you for the question. Wait. You have to be, and
It's not just for the roof.
let's go to the, yeah, and hand it to the man behind you when you get done.
Got it. Sales to people or sales to the business? How do you see the difference, and if there is a difference, and how will you change approach?
Okay, I caught most of that. Something about sales and people in the business, and what was the rest of it?
Now, if you're selling to the people or you're selling to the business, so there is a B2B or B2C sales.
Yes. We were B to C when we were selling to the pharmacy chains. But what got us there, as you identified up there, was we were B to B selling to the pharmacy chains. What got us there? Okay, another quick story. We got an honest to God letter in the mail. This will illustrate your point. I'm not just spinning yarns here, but like with a postage stamp on it. And it was from a big pharmacy chain in the southeastern United States. And they said, we're having our annual meeting to set up our planogram. Planogram is if you walk into a CVS, you'll notice that certain toothpaste is always here in every store and other toothpaste is down here. And they spend a lot of money and research trying to figure out where stuff ought to go. If you wanted to be in the retail store, you had to be on the planogram. So we are doing the annual setup of our planogram. If you would like to be on our planogram for the coming 12 months, fly to Clearwater, Florida for a 15-minute meeting. So I thought, well, that's just nuts. And I cast about a little bit and I said, who would we be meeting with? You'd be meeting with Jeff. Real name. What is Jeff doing and how is he evaluated? Jeff has a job you don't want because he's got to listen to one hysterical vendor after another at 15-minute interviews for an entire week. Well, you're right, I don't want that job. How is Jeff evaluated? He is evaluated on how much slotting fees he can extort from the vendors that come in. I thought, well, this will be entertaining because we don't have any money. But two of us went there anyway. And in that lobby, you would have thought you were at Cirque du Soleil. I mean, there were people there with end caps and all kinds of passionate presentations. I'll walk your dog. I'll pick up your dry cleaning. It was just astonishing. And two of us were just sitting there with a little briefcase. When our time came, we went in with our little briefcase. And I said, Jeff, thank you for having us. This is not going to be like any other 15-minute meeting you've had this week because we don't have any money and we're not going to give you a nickel. But I'm going to take 5 minutes and tell you who we are, 5 minutes and tell you about our product, and 5 minutes telling you why you want us in your stores anyway. And he said, well, it's your 15 minutes, sport, you know, knock yourself out. I mean, literally, that's what he did. So the first 10 minutes, we pretty much did what you'd expect us to do. Oh, we're so fabulous. Our product is so fabulous. We got to the last 5 minutes and we started pulling paper out of the briefcase. And we said, Jeff, these are the customers that we are selling our product to now in the states where you have stores. There's 10,000 of them. Quick sidebar. I was almost going to forget this, and you would have prompted me. People with diabetes are worth much more to a retail pharmacist than those of us who do not have diabetes. Because I might walk in and buy toothpaste and a greeting card. Someone with diabetes buys insulin strips, glucose monitors, et cetera. They're high value customers. So when I said I have 10,000 customers with diabetes that I'm already selling to, and I am in contact with them. And I've told them, I'm not selling to you guys directly anymore. And every one of them has the same question. Which retail pharmacy can I go to buy your stuff? So Jeff, how would you like us to answer their question? And he sat there for a solid minute. And by the way, if you don't think that's a long time, hold your breath. And I don't know where we found the discipline, but we didn't say a word. Well, he just sat there thinking, shit. And he said, okay, you're in. Big dinner for us that night. So we started B2C. We established our credibility. We tied a bow around that bunch of customers and sold them to the retailers. Now we're B2B. Okay, long answer, but a good question. All right, I'm going to stop because if you'd like to stay in touch with me, scan that QR code and you will get a little something that says, well, tell me how I find you. And I send out blogs, et cetera, from time to time. You know, we get to talking about hiring practices, and I'll send you something that says, don't hire your worthless relatives, you'll regret it, et cetera. And you may find that some of the things that I've learned and the entrepreneurs I work with have learned are helpful. And this book's on Amazon. I think the audio version's like $5 or something. It's short money, but you may enjoy it. Okay, let me summarize. The only oh, by the way, thank you for being here this evening. Come back next Tuesday and Wednesday and Thursday. Actually, come back all this week. The only non-negotiable requirement for successful business is customers. And for your business to succeed, you must provide something that is important and unique, but not to the world at large, to someone. Therefore, find out who really wants, not needs, who really wants your product or service. Find them and tell them about it and take their money. Thank you very much.